I found myself standing in the bathroom of a house that wasn't mine, staring at a pregnancy test I'd hidden in my coat pocket, knowing that in the next room my husband of 40 years was making small talk with people who would never speak to me again once they knew the truth. Let me back up because you need to understand how a woman my age, a grandmother, someone who'd spent decades being the dependable one, the rock everyone leaned on, ended up here. My name is Margaret. I'm 63 years old, and 6 months ago I believed my life was essentially over. Not in a dramatic way. Just in that quiet, suffocating way where you wake up one morning and realize you've become invisible. My kids were grown with families of their own. My husband Robert spent more time at his woodworking shop than looking at me. I'd retired from teaching 2 years earlier and discovered that retirement, at least for me, felt less like freedom and more like being put on a shelf. Then I met Daniel at a community art class I joined out of sheer desperation for something, anything, to fill my days. He was 58, recently divorced, with these intense green eyes that actually saw me. Not the grandmother version, not the retired teacher version, but me. The woman I'd forgotten existed underneath all those layers of duty and routine. We were assigned as partners for a watercolor project, and when his hand brushed mine while reaching for the cadmium yellow, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades, something I thought had died. At first, it was innocent. Coffee after class, conversations about art and life and dreams we'd given up on. He told me about his failed marriage, how his wife had left him for someone younger, how it had destroyed his confidence. I told him about Robert's emotional distance, how I'd spent years trying to reconnect only to be met with distraction and disinterest. Daniel listened in a way I'd forgotten men could listen. If you're watching this and thinking you know where this is going, hit that subscribe button, because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about myself. The first time Daniel kissed me was in the parking lot after class, 3 weeks into our friendship. I should have pulled away. I should have remembered my marriage, my grandchildren, my reputation in our small community of Riverside Falls, Connecticut. Instead, I kissed him back. And in that moment, I felt alive in a way that terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. I drove home that night with my hands shaking on the steering wheel, my lips still tingling, my mind screaming at me about what I'd done. Robert was already asleep when I got home, sprawled on his side of the bed we'd shared for 4 decades, snoring softly. I stood in the doorway watching him, this man I'd built a life with, and felt absolutely nothing. That's what scared me most. Not the guilt I expected, but the absence of it. The affair, if that's what you want to call it, started slowly. Lunch dates that turned into afternoon drives. Afternoon drives that turned into renting a small studio apartment across town. I told Robert I was taking more classes, joining book clubs, volunteering. He barely looked up from his phone when I spoke. And here's what no one tells you about having an affair at 63. It's not about the physical aspect, though God knows that was revelatory in ways I won't detail here. It was about feeling seen again, feeling desired, feeling like I still had a future instead of just a past. Daniel would look at me like I was the most fascinating person in the room. He remembered details about stories I'd told weeks earlier. He asked about my opinions, my dreams, what I wanted from the rest of my life. When had Robert last done that? I couldn't remember. But 3 months in, something shifted. I started feeling nauseated in the mornings, exhausted by early afternoon. My breasts were tender. I dismissed it as stress, as age, as anything except what my body was clearly trying to tell me. Because women my age don't get pregnant. We're past that. We're done with that chapter. Except apparently, I wasn't. Stay with me. Because what I discovered next made everything infinitely more complicated. I took the test in a gas station bathroom on the other side of town, somewhere no one would recognize me. I waited the 3 minutes that felt like 3 hours. And when those 2 pink lines appeared, I actually laughed. Not from joy, from the sheer absurdity of it. At 63 years old, after my youngest child turned 38, after I'd been sure that part of my life was permanently closed, I was pregnant. My first thought wasn't about the baby, it was about math. Robert and I hadn't been intimate in over 8 months. He'd know immediately that this child couldn't be his. My second thought was about Daniel. How would a man who'd just escaped one failed marriage react to his girlfriend, his significantly older girlfriend, being pregnant? My third thought was about my daughter Emma and my son Chris, about my 4 grandchildren, about my friends at church, about my entire life in Riverside Falls where everyone knew everyone and secrets didn't stay buried. I sat in that gas station bathroom for 20 minutes, just breathing, trying to find some version of reality where this made sense. And then my phone rang. It was Robert. "Where are you?" he asked, and something in his voice made my blood run cold. "Running errands," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Why?" "Because Emma just called. She said she saw your car parked outside some apartment building downtown last Tuesday. She said she saw you going inside with a man." The world tilted. "What apartment building?" I asked, buying time, my mind racing. "That's what I want to know, Margaret. What apartment building? What man?" I hung up without answering. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I stared at the pregnancy test still sitting on top of the paper toilet seat cover. Evidence of my betrayal. Evidence of my new life. Evidence of everything I'd wanted and everything I was about to lose. You need to stay until the end, because the choice I made next destroyed more than just my marriage. I drove to Daniel's apartment in a daze. He was home, working on a painting, classical music playing softly in the background. He smiled when he saw me, that beautiful smile that had started all of this, and I wanted to run into his arms and pretend none of this was happening. Instead, I showed him the test. His smile disappeared. His face went completely blank. And in that moment of silence, I knew. "You're sure?" he finally asked. "Yes." "How is that even possible?" "You said you couldn't." "I was wrong." More silence. He sat down heavily on the couch, running his hands through his hair. I'd seen him do that gesture 100 times when he was stressed, but never directed at me, never because of me. "What do you want to do?" he asked, and I heard it. The distance in his voice, the fear, the desire for me to make this problem disappear. "I don't know," I whispered. "Margaret, I care about you. You know I do. But I'm 58 years old. I just got divorced. I'm not ready to start over with a baby, with someone else's baby." "Someone else's baby?" The words felt like a slap. "Daniel, it's our baby." "You're married," he said, and there it was. The truth we'd been dancing around for months. "You have a husband, a family, a whole life that doesn't include me." "A life I was willing to leave for you," I said, and realized as I said it that it was true. Somewhere in the past 3 months, I'd started imagining a future where I left Robert, where Daniel and I built something real together. It had been a fantasy, but it had sustained me. "Were you?" he asked quietly. "Or were you just playing? If you think you know how this ends, you don't. Keep watching." I left Daniel's apartment and drove aimlessly for hours. By the time I got home, it was almost midnight. Robert was waiting for me in the living room, every light in the house blazing. "Sit down," he said. I sat. I called Emma back. I asked her exactly what she saw. She said she's been seeing your car at that apartment building for weeks. Always the same time. Always the same day. She didn't want to tell me, but she was worried about you. I didn't say anything. What could I say? "Are you having an affair?" Robert asked, and his voice cracked on the last word. I looked at this man I'd been married to for 40 years. We'd raised 2 children together. We'd buried his parents and mine. We'd survived job losses and health scares and the general erosion that happens to most long marriages. And somewhere along the way, we'd stopped being partners and started being roommates. But he didn't deserve this. Whatever distance had grown between us, whatever dissatisfaction I'd felt, he didn't deserve this. "Yes," I said. The sound he made wasn't quite a sob, wasn't quite a gasp, just a wounded exhalation of air like I'd punched him in the stomach. "How long?" 3 months. "Who is he?" "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me," Robert shouted, and I flinched. In 40 years of marriage, he'd never raised his voice to me like that. Someone from my art class, I said quietly. Your art class. He laughed, a bitter sound. I encouraged you to take that class. I thought it would be good for you. I thought it would make you happy. It did make me happy, I whispered. Apparently. He stood up, paced to the window, stared out at our quiet suburban street. I need you to leave. Robert, I need you to pack a bag and leave. Tonight. I can't look at you right now. And here's where everything got worse because I had to tell him about the baby. I opened my mouth to tell him. I truly intended to. But what came out was, I'll stay at Emma's. Emma knows? No, but I'll tell her. Robert turned to look at me then. Really look at me. And I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not hurt. Disappointment. Deep, profound disappointment. Who are you? He asked. Because the woman I married would never have done this. He was right. The woman he married wouldn't have. But the woman he married had slowly disappeared over 40 years of being taken for granted, of watching her husband become more interested in his hobbies than his wife, of feeling herself fade into the background of her own life. But I didn't say that. I just went upstairs and packed a bag. Emma's house was dark when I arrived at 1 a.m. I sat in her driveway for 15 minutes before finally texting her. I'm outside. Can I stay tonight? The porch light came on. Emma appeared in the doorway in her bathrobe, her hair messy from sleep, concern written all over her face. Mom? What's wrong? What do you think I told her? Comment below because the truth is more complicated than you imagine. I told Emma that Robert and I had a fight, that we needed space, that I'd explain everything in the morning. She made up the guest room and brought me tea and hugged me goodnight, and I felt like the worst person in the world because I knew that when she learned the truth, those hugs would stop. I didn't sleep. I lay in Emma's guest room, in the house where my grandchildren lived, and thought about the pregnancy test in my purse, about Daniel's reaction, about Robert's face, about the complete destruction of my life that I'd set in motion because I was selfish enough to want to feel alive again. At 63, I'd thought my life was over. Now I wondered if I'd just destroyed any chance of a future at all. The next morning, Emma knocked on my door early. Mom, can we talk? She sat on the edge of the guest bed, and I could see she'd been crying. Dad called, she said. He told me about the affair. My heart stopped. He's devastated, Mom. I've never heard him sound like that. I know. How could you do this to him? To our family? Emma, you don't understand. Then explain it to me. Explain how my mother, who taught me about commitment and honor and keeping your promises, could throw away a 40-year marriage for what? Some fling with a stranger? He's not a stranger. That's your defense? Emma's voice rose. That you know him? Mom, you have grandchildren. You have a husband who loves you. You have a life. A life where I'd become invisible, I said, and the words came out sharper than I intended. Emma, when was the last time your father really looked at me, really saw me, really cared about what I thought or felt or wanted? So your solution was to cheat? My solution was to remember I was still alive, still a person, still someone who mattered. Emma stared at me like I was a stranger. I don't know who you are right now. Neither do I whispered. She left the room. I heard her on the phone in the hallway, her voice low and urgent, probably calling her brother Chris, probably telling him what their mother had done. I sat there, holding the secret of the pregnancy like a live grenade, knowing that when I finally told them, the explosion would be catastrophic. Here's what you need to understand, and why you need to stay until the end. I had 3 choices, and each one destroyed a different version of my future. Choice 1. Tell Robert about the pregnancy. Watch his face as he did the math. Watch our marriage end not just in betrayal, but in absolute humiliation. Choice 2. Tell Daniel about needing to keep the baby. Watch him walk away like I knew he would, because his reaction in his apartment had told me everything I needed to know about his commitment. Choice 3. Make a decision that no one would forgive me for. I called Daniel. He answered on the first ring. Margaret, are you okay? I've been worried. I need to see you, I said. Right now. We met at a diner 2 towns over, somewhere we'd never been before, somewhere no one would recognize us. He looked tired, stressed, older than he had just yesterday. I told Robert, I said without preamble. Daniel's face went pale. What did he say? He kicked me out. My daughter knows. My whole family probably knows by now. I'm sorry, he said, and he sounded like he meant it. Margaret, I'm so sorry. I left my marriage for you, I said, keeping my voice steady even though I wanted to scream. I destroyed my family for you, and I need to know if that meant anything at all. Daniel reached across the table, took my hand. Of course it meant something. You mean everything to me. Then what are we going to do about the baby? His hand went still in mine. I thought we agreed. We didn't agree on anything. You said you weren't ready. I never said what I wanted. What do you want? He asked. And I heard the trap in the question, the way my answer would determine everything. The truth? I didn't know. At 63, was I really prepared to start over with an infant? To go through pregnancy and childbirth at an age when most women were becoming great-grandmothers? To raise a child into my 80s? But I also knew that this might be my last chance at something. At what? I wasn't sure. Redemption? Purpose? A reason to keep existing instead of just waiting to die? I want to know if you'll be there, I said. Not asking you to marry me. Not asking you to play house. Just asking if you'll be there. Stay with me. The answer he gave changed everything. Daniel pulled his hand back. I can't, he said. Margaret, I care about you, but I can't do this. I can't start a life with a baby at my age. I can't be what you need me to be. So what was this? I asked, gesturing between us. What were we doing for the past 3 months? We were 2 lonely people finding comfort in each other. Comfort. The word tasted bitter. I destroyed my marriage for comfort? You destroyed your marriage because it was already dead, Daniel said, not unkindly. I didn't do that. Whatever was broken between you and Robert was broken long before I showed up. He wasn't wrong, but he also wasn't right. I left the diner and sat in my car, both hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. My phone buzzed. Text from Chris. Mom, what the hell is going on? Dad won't stop crying. Call me. I turned off my phone. I drove to a clinic I'd found online, one that specialized in women's health, one that could give me options. I sat in the waiting room surrounded by women decades younger than me, all of us there for various reasons, all of us carrying secrets. A nurse called my name. I stood up. My legs felt like water. And then I turned around and walked out. Because here's what I realized sitting in that waiting room. I'd spent 63 years making choices based on what other people needed from me. What Robert needed, what Emma and Chris needed, what my parents needed before they died, what my students needed, what everyone except me needed. And I was done. I drove back to Riverside Falls, back to my house, where Robert's truck was parked in the driveway. I let myself in with my key. Robert was in the kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee like it held answers. We need to talk, I said. He looked up at me, his eyes red. I don't want to hear about him. It's not about him. It's about me. And it's about you. And it's about the fact that our marriage has been dying for years and neither of us wanted to admit it. So your solution was to cheat? My solution was to feel something again. Anything. Because, Robert, I'd stopped feeling anything when I was with you. He flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? When was the last time we had a real conversation? When was the last time you asked me about my day and actually listened to the answer? When was the last time you looked at me like I was someone worth looking at? I've been busy. For years? You've been busy for years? Silence. I'm not saying the affair was right, I continued. I'm saying that it was a symptom of something that was already broken. So what now? Robert asked. You want a divorce? And here's where I finally told him the truth. Subscribe now if you haven't, because this is where everything truly fell apart. I'm pregnant, I said. The color drained from Robert's face. What? I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. He did the math immediately. I watched it happen on his face. The confusion, then the understanding, then the devastation. It's his, he said. Not a question, a statement. Yes. Robert stood up so fast his chair fell backward. Get out. Robert, get out of my house. Get out right now. This is my house too. I don't care, he shouted. I don't care about the legalities or the paperwork or any of it. You betrayed me. You got pregnant with another man's child. And now you're standing in my kitchen telling me like it's just another piece of news. Get out. I left. Not because he told me to, but because I could see in his face that if I stayed, something would break that could never be repaired. I checked into a hotel. Not in Riverside Falls, but 2 towns over. A generic chain hotel with beige walls and industrial carpeting. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let myself cry. My phone, which I'd turned back on, was flooded with messages. Emma, Chris, my sister, my best friend from church. Everyone knew. In a town like Riverside Falls, secrets lasted about 15 minutes. The messages ranged from concerned to furious to disappointed. Chris's text simply said, "How could you?" I wanted to explain. I wanted to tell them all that I'd felt invisible, that I'd been dying slowly in my own life, that Daniel had just been a catalyst for something that was already happening. But the truth is, there's no explanation that makes infidelity okay. There's no justification that erases the hurt. At 63, I'd thought I was too old for my life to change this dramatically. I was wrong. The next few weeks were a blur. I hired a lawyer, filed for divorce, moved into a small rental apartment on the edge of town, attended my first prenatal appointment alone. The doctor was kind but clearly surprised. "And your support system?" she asked gently. "Complicated," I said. Emma refused to see me. Chris sent occasional texts that were polite but cold. Robert had our mutual friends, our church community, our entire social circle. I had no one. Daniel called once. I didn't answer. My sister flew in from California, the only person in my family still speaking to me. "You've really done it this time," she said when we met for lunch. Not judgmental, just factual. "I know. Are you keeping the baby?" "Yes." "Why?" And that was the question, wasn't it? Why was a 63-year-old woman choosing to have a baby that would make her a social pariah, that had cost her her marriage and her family and her entire life? "Because," I said slowly, "for the first time in my life, I'm choosing something just for me. Not because it's responsible or practical or what everyone expects, but because I want to." My sister was quiet for a long moment. "That's either the bravest or the most selfish thing I've ever heard." "Maybe it's both," I said. "Comment below if you think I'm brave or selfish, because I honestly don't know anymore." 3 months into the pregnancy, I was showing. Not much, but enough that strangers noticed. Enough that I couldn't hide it anymore. I ran into Emma at the grocery store. She was with my 2 youngest grandchildren, ages 4 and 6. They ran to me immediately. "Grandma!" Emma's face was stone. "Kids, say hello to your grandmother and then we need to finish shopping." "Emma," I said softly, "please, can we talk?" "I don't think there's anything to say." "There's everything to say. I'm your mother. I'm still your mother. You stopped being my mother the day you decided your happiness was more important than your family." The 4-year-old, my granddaughter Sophia, tugged on Emma's sleeve. "Mommy, why are you mad at Grandma?" "I'm not mad, sweetheart. We just need to go." "Will you at least tell them about the baby?" I asked. "They deserve to know they're going to have an aunt or uncle." Emma's expression hardened. "No, because you're not part of this family anymore." She left with the kids. Sophia looked back at me over her shoulder, confused and sad, and I felt like my heart was being torn out of my chest. But here's what kept me going. I was alive. For the first time in decades, I was fully, completely alive. Yes, it hurt. Yes, I'd lost everything. But I was feeling it all, And after so many years of feeling nothing, even the pain was better than numbness. At 5 months pregnant, I got a call from Robert's lawyer. The divorce papers were ready to sign. I'd get half of everything we'd built together, which felt simultaneously too much and not nearly enough compensation for 40 years of marriage. I signed them in a coffee shop, my lawyer across from me, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold the pen. "Are you okay?" the lawyer asked. "No," I said honestly, "but I will be." At 6 months pregnant, Daniel showed up at my apartment. "I heard you kept the baby," he said. "Yes." "Can I ask why?" "Because I wanted to." He nodded slowly. "I've been thinking a lot about what I said, about how I handled things, and I'm sorry." "Okay." "That's it? Just okay?" "What do you want me to say, Daniel? You made your choice. I made mine." "I want to be involved," he said, "if you'll let me. I'm not asking to get back together. I'm not asking for anything except maybe a chance to know my child." I looked at this man who'd been the catalyst for everything, who'd made me feel alive and then abandoned me when that aliveness came with consequences. "I need to think about it," I said. He nodded and left. I haven't called him back yet. Now I'm 7 months pregnant. I've started to feel the baby move. These little flutters that remind me something real is happening. I'm taking prenatal yoga with women who could be my granddaughters. I'm setting up a nursery in my tiny rental apartment. I'm reading books about childbirth and infant care and wondering if I'm completely insane. Chris called last week. First time we'd spoken in months. "I don't agree with what you did," he said. "I probably never will. But you're my mom, and I don't want my kid to grow up not knowing their grandmother." I cried on the phone. He didn't say he forgave me. He didn't say we were okay. But it was something. Emma hasn't called. I don't know if she ever will. Robert sent me a text on what would have been our 41st anniversary. "I hope you're happy. I don't know if I'm happy. But I know I'm alive. I know I'm here in this strange new life I created through destruction and selfishness and desperate desire to feel something real." At 63, I thought my life was over. Instead, I blew it up and built something completely new from the ashes. I don't know if it's better. I don't know if it was worth it. I don't know if I'm brave or selfish or just foolish. In 2 months, I'll have a baby. I'll be a 64-year-old first-time single mother. I'll probably be exhausted and overwhelmed and wondering what I've done. But I'll also be living a life I chose, not one that happened to me by default. So here's my question for you, and I really want you to answer in the comments. Did I do the right thing? Is choosing yourself, even when it destroys everything around you, ever justified? Can you find redemption after betrayal? And is being alive, truly alive, worth any cost? Because I'm about to find out. And whatever happens next, whatever consequences I still haven't faced, whatever bridges I've burned that can't be rebuilt, I did this. I chose this. For better or worse, this life is mine. Hit subscribe if you want to know what happens when the baby comes. Like this video if any part of my story resonated with you. And comment below with your honest opinion, because I genuinely don't know if I'm the villain or the hero of my own life anymore. Maybe I'm both. Maybe we all are. I'm Margaret. I'm 63 years old. And I'm just getting started.